look at mitzvot, they're an opportunity to connect. They're opportunity for finite to connect with infinite, for matter to connect with spirit, for body to connect with soul. They're a mechanism and a means to enriching and engaging in life in an intentional and conscious and healthy way. So that's what we're going to be exploring together. And when it comes to mitzvot, there are some that we can get. Like every single one of us can understand, don't steal, don't kill. Those make sense, right? If every country in 2020 followed those, we'd be like really good. And those mitzvot are actually defined as mishpatim. They're judicial, they make sense, they're logical, right? We shouldn't have to convince someone that it's not okay to steal, right? In preschool, you take someone's cookie, they say no. We take the truck from someone, we try to train children from a very young age, give it back. Had an interesting conversation with one of my children. Maybe I'm going to buy a blender. I'll try it for a month. I'll give it back. I was like, well, that's not exactly how this works. If you buy something, you buy something. You don't, right? These they're logical. They're comfortable. We can understand them. Okay. And then come edut. Edut are testimony. They remind us of things. So good example, an anniversary, right? An anniversary reminds you of the day. Why do people celebrate? Oh, this is our first date, and that was this anniversary and that anniversary. Anniversaries are a big deal. God forbid you forget an anniversary. Yeah, we all understand, right? Or a birthday. Birthdays are a very big deal. They remind us of something that happened on that day. And so edut are things like matzah. We eat matzah to remind ourselves, Pesach, the Seder. Everyone knows it. Everyone hopefully loves it, right? We have a Seder to remind us that we were slaves and we were in Egypt, and then God saved us in 10 plagues and miracles and wonders and scooped us out and made us a free nation. It reminds us of something that happened to us. So when we observe those mitzvot, they also feel good, right? They also make sense. And then in every relationship, there are parts of the relationship that we may not get. And if you love anyone and you love them for a while, there are going to be parts where you're like, but they're part of the relationship. And those are called chukim. They're super rational. They're above and beyond rationale. And we don't always get it. I don't always get why the socks can't quite make it into the laundry basket. Not naming names. Thank God I have quite a household full of many people. So we're not pointing fingers at anyone, right? But I don't get it. Like the laundry basket's right there. You just literally up and in, right? But it may be part of the relationship, and that may be okay. And I'm sure we could think of deeper ones. Maybe it's a personality challenge with maybe a certain child, and I don't get why they're seeing things that way, or a spouse or a sibling or a parent or anyone that we really care about, right? And so there are always going to be layers and parts that may not make sense, but we're in the relationship. So that's what we're going to do, is by each of these mitzvot, we're going to kind of start to understand how they're part of the relationship. And as we unpack them over the next 8 weeks together, we'll unpack different mitzvot and we'll understand that, yes, they may seem overwhelming. And I'm not sure how we're going to pack in so much until we'll see, right? In such a short amount of time. But that's the idea. We'll pack a punch, and hopefully each one of them will have something that are real and relevant and practical, that I can really see how it resonates with me, with my reality, with my life, with my circumstance, and how all these things that we're searching for or we're looking to accomplish, growth and mindfulness. There's so many buzzwords. We'll figure out the buzzwords. If someone's an expert on buzzwords, I'm not. So feel free to jump in here. But there's so many things we're trying meaning, and we're trying to understand where we fit in this world and what's the purpose of everything that's going on. There's so much. And yet Judaism gives us those tools. Now, within every mitzvah, there's going to be multiple layers. And if I told you that within a half hour, we're going to unpack one mitzvah completely with all the layers, and we're going to understand them by the end, and it's going to be wrapped up in a neat little bow in a package with all the layers of understanding, this is false advertising, okay? So we're not, but we're going to at least try to understand that within every mitzvah, there's so many layers to understand it, because Torah is infinite. It's God's will and God's wisdom. And so the layers and levels of understanding actually fall under different categories. There's the basic understanding of the mitzvah. There's the things that are maybe hinted to or that it strengthens within myself. There's the medrash that comes along with the mitzvah, the stories, the allegory, the analogies. And then there's the deeper, more mystical layers of how that mitzvah is potentially transformative into my life. And that's what we're going to hopefully unpack week by week. So this is kind of a teaser, okay? It's a little bit of a teaser, but I realized that jumping straight into the mitzvot without zooming out and saying, wait, why are we even spending this time? Why are we gathering together to do this? Because all of us, myself included, right? We can unpack and dig deeper into, maybe it's a mitzvah that I've been doing for years and it's become habitual and I never got to re-examine it under a different lens. Maybe it's a mitzvah I've heard about and I totally don't get, or I don't see how it's real or practical to my life. Or maybe it's a mitzvah that I never heard of. But every single one have meaning and layers for us to understand. And each one is as relevant in 2020 as when God told us about these mitzvot many, many years ago. So we'll unpack them. And it may seem overwhelming because you know what? Life, I don't know about you, but life's a little bit overwhelming lately. Who feels a little overwhelmed? You don't have to, yeah, thanks for a little bit of honesty there, right? A little overwhelming, right? There's this uncertainty. There's an uncertainty of time, and we have no idea how long this is going on for, right? We're living in flux. Everything is before the way it was and the way it will be and the way it should be and the way it could be, and just wait till we can travel again. I mean, we all know, right? How many things we put on hold just to make things happen. And here, you know, my husband and I, we always, 14th year, we plan the semester, we know this week is this and Shabbat is this. And we kind of have a system of how we know things work. And now, system, no system. The system is flexibility. The system is openness. The system is re-examining. And that's not so comfortable. It's definitely not comfortable for me. I can say those I've spoken to will agree, not so comfortable. But yet, as overwhelming as it is, that the more we adapt, the more we'll see how Torah and Torah values and mitzvot that have traveled with us through life, the Jewish people for thousands of years, are so necessary, real, relevant, practical, and I'll go back to another extent, to another stretch and say, and doable, and relevant, yes, in 2020. So we'll unpack Shabbat, and we'll unpack kosher, and maybe we'll unpack tzedakah. We'll unpack so many different ones, and we'll see, how can I bring that into my life? How does that give me sanity in an insane world? Because I think we can all agree things are, yeah, we don't have to, we understand. I feel like I don't even have to say this. I feel like this is like, you know, everyone understands what life is, you know, people like alone, together, alone. I'm like, no, we're all in our very, you know, chaotic, tumultuous time, but yet one thing has stayed constant. You see, when Passover came, no matter what was going on, we still had a Seder. And when Shavuot came and when Shabbat came, the candles were still lit. No matter what was going on in the news, where you felt life pulling you, those constant moments have not changed. And they're our anchor, they're our foundation. They give us stability and meaning and depth. And they were given to us by a God who knew what you and I need, even in 2020, right? Even in 2020, even during a global pandemic, even during chaotic times. And so when we unpack them and we learn together, we'll understand more real and relevant how we can do this. And you know what's incredible? On our campus every year, 100 Seder for 120 and Seder. Now COVID, doors are closed, panic, Seder kits to go. It was quite an adjustment. For the first time in, 15 years, I had a Seder with just my husband and our 6 children, right? And we can look and we can say, wow, Our seders weren't what they should have been or what they could have been, but they were what they were meant to be. We still had 4 cups of wine. We still told the Manashtana. We still talked about our past. We still talked about our present, and we still discussed our future. Okay? So yes, things feel different and it's not so comfortable. But I want to share with you, in the beginning of quarantine times, I spent time with a young girl. I know I had a large gathering with a bunch of high schoolers, and we were having a conversation. It was one young girl that said this line that really resonated with me. I said, how's everyone doing? And everyone's, overwhelmed, this, that. And she said, my outside world is quieter, but my inner world, is it making a lot of noise? And I thought that was so profound from a 15-year-old. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I'm not running to vacations and to the movies and to restaurants and to friends. But now I'm facing me, who I am as a young Jewish woman in 2020. How much of my Jewish values are mine? How much was my school, my principal, my teacher, my parents? I'm facing me. And one thing we know, well, there's a lot we don't know, but one thing we know is that Torah's wisdom is absolutely giving us the tools to navigate the ups and downs of life. And that's what we're going to be doing together. We'll unpack it. We'll look at how can I bring that into my home. As one of the moms shared with us at the end of our learning, she said, I'm not the most religious, but I realize my home needs more light. I can light Shabbat candles. I don't need to do it only at this temple, at the service when I can light. It's my Jewish home. So each and every one of us, wherever we find ourselves, a dorm room, right? Maybe working from home or crowded with people that we're spending, maybe it seems like too much time with. We can all look at the wisdom of the Torah. We can all look at the wisdom of mitzvot, and we can all see how can they resonate and how can they be relevant to me, and I can make them real and meaningful. And I saw something fascinating. Yes, the seders weren't what they would have been, what they could have been, what they should have been. But in our small little campus town where most of the students were gone, we sent over 67 Passover packages to people who are now making a seder in their home. And one young girl, my husband and I joked, we said we were running a Seder hotline because one girl in California was helping her family do a Seder, and another girl in North Texas was helping her family, and her mom's like, oh, you figure this out, talk to Manya, I don't know, make a Seder. And one girl was koshering her kitchen so it could be a Passover. So mitzvot and Torah, I think what we're learning is you and I as Jewish women around the world, we have the power to bring these into our lives in a real practical way. We're going to unpack it together. And I want to let you know something. You see, one of the things that I told that young man, do you remember the young man, I think I said Sam, in the beginning, who said he's opting out? I said to him, you know what? I hate to say it, Sam, you can't opt out. He said, what? I said, oh, you can run. You can run from your Jewish identity. You can ignore it. But whether it's 20 or 30 or 90, it's going to knock at your door because you have something called a neshama, and it's a part of you forever. And I shared with him, and for 9 years, every time Sam would come out of a debate in an argument, I say, you got to go to yeshiva. You got to learn. Knowledge is power. 9 years later, Sam actually went to yeshiva briefly for 4 months. And he didn't come out with a big black hat and a long beard, but he came out and said, I know I want to have a Jewish home, and I'm going to marry a Jewish girl. And you know what? I know as a young man, I could put tefillin on every single day and bring more Judaism into my life. So you see, it's a part of us, our Jewish identity. It's not like there's me, and then there's temple, and then there's Judaism. Our Judaism and our soul are like this. We are it, and it is us. And as we explore each of these mitzvot, we're going to see ourselves through that lens. And I'll end with this beautiful, interesting story. I was on a flight, on an El Al flight to Israel. This is when we were still flying, right? We'll get back to it. Nothing lasts forever, right? And I sat near a lady, and she says, you're Chabadnik. I said, well, how do you know? She says, because you said you live in the middle of Texas. Religious women like you don't just live in the middle of Texas. You're Chabad. I said, yeah, actually I am. So she said, well, I really didn't like you people. Well, that's a nice hello. Good thing I had thick skin. I was like, okay. I mean, we're friends. We're the next 11 hours together. So we gotta be friends, right? I gotta make this at least friendly. So she said, so let me tell you a little about myself. She says in a very strong Israeli accent, she said, my father was in the Holocaust. My father, as a young teen, left Europe on a boat. On that boat, overboard went the tefillin, overboard went God, overboard went his Jewish identity. He arrived in Israel, an Israeli for Israel, right? He arrived building the land of Israel. And she said, there's nothing he resented more than you young Chabadniks bothering him about his Judaism and reminding him he's a Jew. She said, I'm telling you, those young boys with the little black hats, those little squeaky voices, they come up to him, Henachta, did you put on tefillin? Did you put on, what? She said, so he would avoid them. He knew he figured out they were out on Fridays, he'd avoid them. She said, but he raised us to be proud Israelis, secular Israelis. She said, and you know what? I moved to America, and suddenly I was in crisis, and who was there for me but Chabad? Chabad was there for me. And suddenly I realized those little guys with the black hats, they're not horrible. They're actually wonderful, loving, kind, warm people. And I would try to tell my father, and he would, you don't want to hear from me. But then they called me from Israel, and they said, your dad's not doing well. And I went to visit him. And I was wheeling him down the street, and we passed the little kiosk of those little, stubborn, cute Chabad boys. And they said to him, Nachta, did you rap? And he said, no. And I figured I'll keep pushing. He said, Aval Shav. He wanted to do it now. And I watched my father in his 90s wrap tefillin with tears streaming down his face. Maybe this was the first time since his bar mitzvah. And she said, and part of me watched him as he said Shema Yisrael. And she said, and I knew we were getting towards the end of his life. And I said, really? She said, because I had heard and I had learned that the soul of a Jew is always there, no matter what layers we put on, whatever life happens. And when I saw that come out, and sure enough, yes, I'm actually heading back to Israel for his yahrzeit, for the anniversary of his death. Why am I sharing this story? We often don't realize the little day-to-day we have, each and every one of us, this beautiful soul, and life and circumstances are going to throw layers upon it. But through the day-to-day mitzvot, it's not the grand, big things. It's a relationship with Hashem. And together we'll unpack and explore that relationship. And we'll explore how, yes, in 2020, when we're so isolated and distant, we can be more united and together and bring more Judaism and more meaning and more warmth into our lives in a practical, real way. So, ladies, l'chaim, to each and every one of you. L'chaim, to each and every one of you, carving out time and space on a Monday night when maybe there's other things you can go. Maybe there's not other places you can be, right? But you could be doing something else, right? For sure, there's something on TV that could catch our attention. But you and I are sitting together and we're learning and we're going to grow. And I can't wait for the next 8 weeks. So I hope to see you again. Bring a friend. One of the most incredible parts about Beis Chana is every single person, young and old, learning together, growing together. And may we continue to bring more light into our lives. And then from there, it spreads outward. Looking very forward